Yes, welcome, Olya. Olya Khaleelee from London. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
So, I would like to talk a little bit to you about your experiences at these times around the online group relations conference.
Right.
You
Yes.
took part in several, so what is
Yes.
it the same like in real time, or what is the difference? I'm sure it's not the same exactly, but how does it work?
Yes, it can never be the same. You're quite right, Hüseyin. It's not the same, but it does have certain advantages, which is that you can operate internationally, and it does enable many people to come together. So I've participated in 2 online conferences so far. The first was run by Opus. Normally the Opus conference has about 17 or 20 people coming together face to face, but because it was online, we had 44 people from 17 different countries.
Wow.
So, and it was really, truly amazing. And it included a man who had just come out of hospital, having been discharged with COVID. He'd just come out of hospital and he got up from his bed to sit at his desk and attend the conference. It was so, so important. So it was very fascinating, incredibly diverse membership. Of course, very international, and it was a mixture of people who had never done face-to-face conferences. They had only done online, and those people who are highly experienced in both running conferences and participating in conferences, and they were really there in order to see what does it feel like to be in an online conference. They wanted to see what's the experience like, to think about, well, shall we run one in our country? And there were about half the people who came for that reason. So it was a very fascinating mixture. And I think the 2 things that came out of it, I think, were, first of all, you can work with the dynamics of small group behavior, the unconscious, especially in the small group setting. The large group is much more difficult, because people feel they're in little boxes. Your experience is very remote and it feels very, very difficult to be in the large group. So but then it feels difficult to be in a large group in a face-to-face conference as well. But it's a different kind of difficult.
I see.
What I mean.
So you were a consultant to a large study group.
In that particular conference, I was a consultant to a small study group, and I found that worked very well. The other thing we learned on that first conference was that the conference rests on the technical expertise that is present in the staff. So what happened was in that particular conference, we did not have somebody purely allocated for running the technical aspects of the conference, and because of that, the director had to do it, and that took his focus away from doing the actual direction. So we learned from that experience, you really do need a technical administrator so that the director can focus on directing. The technical administrator makes sure that everything works technically, because inevitably something goes wrong somewhere along the line, or people turn up in the wrong room, or somebody's internet fails. Something always goes wrong technically. So it's really important that you have strong technical expertise among the staff. The third thing we did, which relates to the technical, is before the conference started, in the staff meetings, the staff actually practiced with the technical aspects. They practiced changing rooms, moving from room to room, because they knew for the most part that the membership were going to be more technically savvy than they were, because they were older generation mostly. So, and that was very important learning from that conference. Now, the conference I'm currently in, I'm actually consultant to the large group, and this conference, it's really very interesting because the sessions are shorter. Instead of the standard group relations sessions, I think the small group and large group sessions are 50 minutes.
50
minutes. And when I saw the conference design, it only had 2 large group sessions in it. It had an organization event for 1 day, and it had about four or five small study groups, review and application groups. I thought, oh, well, this is just a tasting menu. You know, it gives people a little taster. That was my thought before it happened. But afterwards, I realized that was not correct. In fact, it gives you quite a powerful experience of what a group relations conference is like, even though it was very short, only 3 days. So this was very illuminating to me. I was very impressed, but of course it was partly due to the experience that the participants, who were students, who were postgrad students, were bringing to this event. I think that certainly helped deepen the level of the work. So I was very impressed that it was possible to do so much in such a short time. And for that conference, we used management Teams, which is, you know, nobody enjoys Teams, but actually it worked pretty well technically, and we all learnt how to manage our way through it. And despite the fact there were only 2 large groups, they were able to use the large group. Now, I don't think they learnt much about the dynamics of large groups, but then you wouldn't in that time. But they were actually able to take up and become aware of having a member role or not having a member role in the large group. So, you know, even though they only had those 2 short sessions, I thought some learning did take place.
So how do you work as a consultant then in an online conference?
Well, I think the thing you do more of is that because your actual physical presence isn't available to contain the group and enable projections into you in the normal way, I think you are a little bit more active than you would be in a regular face-to-face conference. So, for example, you might open the small group by actually saying, you know, this is the first small group, this is the task of the small group, and you begin it and end it. You know, you begin it and then on time you end it by saying this is the end. So whereas in a face-to-face group, you get up and walk out of the room, in an online group, to just disappear would be bizarre. You know, just vanish off the screen. Everyone would wonder what's happened to you. So you actually close it. You say this is the end of the session. And the same with the large group. Somebody opens it, says what the task is, and closes it at the end of the session. So obviously the thing about working online as opposed to working face-to-face is your boundary management is much, much more difficult. In other words, you can't manage the boundaries. You know, if you're working in an organization event and you've got management working in a room, well, somebody will just suddenly turn up and they'll be there. So, you know, that means that mobilizes the director to be more assertive, to say, well, oh, hello, Joan. Oh, yeah, good to see you here. Can you just wait a minute while we just finish off this discussion? So it is more tricky. I think boundary management is more tricky and more difficult. You have much less control. In fact, you have no control.
Yeah, and you refer also to the participants because you can see their names. It's easier then, right? You don't have to.
Yes, exactly. Exactly, and you can go and look at groups without entering them, and you can see where people are distributed in the conference. So this is a very different experience from going face to face and knocking on a door and not being sure if you're going to be allowed in or not, you know. So from that point of view, there's a lot less anxiety to manage. And I think the 2 conferences I participate in, I would say a lot less Kleinian, in quotes, than the majority of face-to-face conferences I've been in. So the consultants, the management, the staff are less restrained. They are much more present verbally.
In the online.
Online, yes, it's more difficult. More, you know, and but it is still possible to work. So it's not the same. I mean, in many ways, it's not as good. In other ways, it is as good because people can attend who wouldn't normally be able to. You know,
Yes.
the cost of flying, accommodation, making plans, being absent from your workplace, all that disappears. The difficulty is working online is very, very tiring. And there's something about the intensity that is very exhausting. In some way, you have to be more present than you normally would be, and you have less time to kind of consider what's going on in your internal world. So it makes it a more exhausting experience for everybody. Now, when you're working in an international conference, you have to be very careful then about the timing, because you really have to run it in the middle of the day from, say, midday till 6, so that those from all the other different countries can actually attend without it being the middle of the night.
Therefore, you are lucky in London, aren't you? I mean, you are in the
yes, exactly.
center, so to
exactly.
say.
Yes, yes, quite. But it has been very fascinating and really a very big learning experience to go online with group relations. And in the past, a year ago, I would have said this is completely impossible. You know, I wouldn't have been in favor of it at all. But having done it, now I'm very much changing my view. I think it's got a lot of advantages. And finally, the other thing is it's much cheaper. You know, you can lower the fees, which means that more people can attend who wouldn't otherwise be able to afford to come.
Yeah.
And I think that's very helpful.
You don't have the costs for the venue and...
Exactly. So you can run it at very low cost, and, you know, that's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah. No travel costs. Yeah, that's right.
Travel, accommodation, all these things.
Yeah. What about the topics? Are the topics similar? The topics people are talking about or reflecting on?
Well, we're living in a post-COVID world, so I think there's been tremendous preoccupation with fragmentation and mental well-being, and a lot of, you know, preoccupation with death and being cut off from other people, and feeling when you're working on the screen that you kind of like you've got this two-dimensional picture of the other person. You only see their head and shoulders. You don't see their body. You don't see their body language. So this, you know, this creates a bit of a problem. But my sense is that people are more open. They're very open with, you know, whatever is on their mind.
Yes.
That has been a striking difference. The kind of, yes, you will get silences, but not so profound as some of the ones I've experienced in face-to-face conferences.
Maybe they are in the safe home space, so it
exactly. And that, of course, is both an advantage and a disadvantage. You know, if your cat walks in or your little child walks in, or you know, it's a different experience.
Interesting, yeah. And if it's too tough, you just push the button, right? And then you are out.
You can just turn off your video, can't you, and still be present.
Yeah.
And still hear what's going on.
Yeah.
You see, that's the other thing about online. You can't tell whether somebody's really there or not, because sometimes with the technical aspects, they may leave to go to another room, but it may indicate that they're still present. You can't tell if they're actually present or not present.
Yeah. You mean physically, or you mean by concentrate physically? Yeah.
Physically, yes.
Yeah, right. That's a good point.
You can't always tell. So it has its uncertainties. But I think in terms of topic, people have been very concerned with isolation, fragmentation, their well-being, very concerned with what's going on in the world, politics, climate change. These have been very powerful themes. And, you know, survival, really.
Yeah. Olya, thank you very much. It was great to talk to you, and all the best.
Thank you very much, Hüseyin. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you.
Bye-bye now.
Olya, we see each other next week.
Okay, take care.
Staff meeting. Take care. You too. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Cheers.